Are live.
Welcome to the NFL Talking Heads Fantasy Football Podcast Show. Here are your hosts, Jeff Carrier and Seth Lowe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into the NFL Talking Heads Fantasy Football Podcast Show. I am your host, Jeff Carrier. He is Seth Lowe. We are back for another episode. Seth, we are on fire right now with recording. We're going to be highlighting Seth's new article published to the website, which is his early 5 players that he hates heading into the 2020 season. Now up on the website, our new website you can check out at NFLTalkingHeads.com. Also, recording live onto YouTube. So if you haven't checked out one of our videos, go ahead and check that out. We're going to be streaming live for all of our videos going forward, so we'll get some live interactions. I'm sure as we get closer to the season and as more people know that we are streaming live, Seth. So be sure to check us out on YouTube. Our new website is up. We are the Fantasy Football Podcast for people who want to win. Also part of the Lineups Podcast Network. Don't forget that. Check them out as well at lineups.com. Seth, let's get right into it. Your top 5 players that you don't like heading into 2020. Same kind of intro question when you're kind of thinking of these players. Was there anything that was kind of a benchmark for, things that you were looking for that you thought that you might not like heading into the 2020 season?
So there's one player I have on here that I don't really not like as a player. I just think he's going to go too high. So ADP has a lot to do with it, but I think I try to focus on players that because it's early, and I try to estimate where I think their ADP will fall. Yep. But it's like even if it's a little bit off, I'm still going to probably not have any shares of them. So it's just players that I'm just basically off of, because even if they're ADP and for example, my first player who we'll talk about in a second is Kerryon. And I predict he's going to go in the mid-4th round. His average draft position was like 3.04 last year. And, 4th round may be aggressive. I don't know. Maybe it's not, depending on what Detroit does in the draft, if they draft another running back. But assuming he's the starter, he's probably going to go in the 4th round. But even if it was like 5th round, I'd probably still be off Kerryon Johnson. And he's probably not falling to the 6 or 7. So, I'm not going to have any shares of Kerryon. And that's just one example. But that's what I went with. I went with players that, I'm just off of, period. And, so that's basically all the way into it for me.
Yeah, some of these are, I guess, a little difficult because you don't know where they're going, but you're projecting a little bit of what the market would be. Regardless of where he is, 4th, 5th, 6th round, I agree. I don't think he'll fall maybe there, but to your point, I think it's time to jump off of this bandwagon of what he could and should be versus what he's actually produced, right?
Absolutely. And no one's higher on Kerryon Johnson than I was last year. I had him in literally every single league except one league. And so I'm doing a complete 360 on Kerryon, but we'll get right into it. The biggest thing with Kerryon is it's just, for all the things that I liked about him going into last year, and he was coming off a really good second half of his rookie season, and he had the injury, and we were like, okay, he showed a lot of promise. If he can just put it all together, have a healthy season, and build on his catching total, like I thought he was someone that could catch 50 balls or so, because he had 32 catches in his rookie season. Problem was, number one, he can't stay healthy. So another lost year for Kerryon. He missed 8 games, and he actually regressed in terms of his pass catching ability, or at least how involved he was in the offense as a pass catcher. So we're looking at somebody who number one, can't stay healthy. And this is 2 years, so he's missed 9 games now. He misses games, and he was incredibly inefficient last year. He shaved 2 yards per carry off his per carry average from the year before. So he actually had basically around the same amount of total carries. He only had 5 less carries than he did in 2018, having played in only two less games. But he just wasn't as efficient. The touchdowns weren't there, and he only had 10 catches in 8 games last season. He only had I don't think he had any game in which he had more than 2 receptions. So he's somebody that just proved to provide zero upside in the passing game, and he's going to be incredibly touchdown dependent. And I think going into his third season, we've seen this twice. If you're a running back in the NFL for in terms of for fantasy, if there's no promise showed in the first 2 years, you got to move on. I mean, I'm not saying he can't have a good third season, but I'm not betting on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you brought up a lot of great points. A lot has to be said when you have a player that should be able to be kind of the lead back, and the coaching staff hasn't really committed to that. They did a little bit in at certain times, but we've also seen with that same existing coaching staff, which is coming back for 2020, that they really haven't done that. The same way that you could look at with Tennessee with Derrick Henry or Minnesota with Dalvin Cook. So I think that we just kind of had to look at how the coaches handle running backs, the same way that you look at a team like New England. It doesn't seem like they're ever going to get to that point on what we think Kerryon should be. So I like that as your first player up on the list. You also have in there your 2019 ADP and 2020 ADP prediction, which I like. It's in the article, which is last year he went 3.04. Obviously, a real big disappointment. And it's when we look at these ADPs now, looking back, it's such a great, especially following up from our path review. Talk about someone who was getting overly drafted just because of his potential versus some of these other people that was making the path list. Mark Ingram, Devontae Freeman, who went dramatically behind and actually finished as a path player, versus Kerryon that obviously did not. Projection mid-4th round, probably pretty accurate, maybe a little more on the aggressive side. Who is your next player that you have?
So my next player is Stefon Diggs, and I just with Stefon Diggs, he went in the 3rd round last year. All right, so where did I have him? So 3.07 was his ADP, 2019. I'm guessing he's going to probably be end of the 3rd round, maybe early 4th round. He's going to be somewhere in that range. And one of the things I mentioned in my article is like Stefon Diggs has really only had one really good season in the NFL. He's another player that has just been completely hampered by injuries to an extent. I mean, he's not missing half a season like Will Fuller or Kerryon, but he's missing games every single season, and he's really only had one season where he was like a top 10 caliber receiver. So that's my biggest issue with Stefon Diggs, and because of his name value or whatever you want to call it, he's always going to be overvalued a little bit. He's very boom or bust. So there's 10 games last season in which he had single-digit fantasy points. So actually 8 points or less. So he just has too many of those games where he's completely non-existent, and he has those explosive games as well, which is why he always ends up with last year he had over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, but 63 catches. Not very good. He's only had 2 seasons in his 5-year career with over 80 catches. Part of that is to missing time, but that's part of what you sign up for when you draft Stefon Diggs. He hasn't had a season in which he's had double-digit touchdowns, and he's a constant threat to be traded. They've been talking about trading him for, it seems like, the past 2 years, and they've held on to him, but just his durability along with just a lot of volatility is why I like Diggs I would welcome him on my team at the right price, but not in the 3rd round and probably not in the 4th round either.
Yeah, because he went 3.07 last year, and he probably didn't do anything to kind of necessarily hurt his stock. If anything, Adam Thielen going down probably kind of kept him in the similar range, which is why you probably have him in the similar range as a late 3rd. But probably didn't really satisfy fantasy owners in the 2019 year, right? Because he had too much up and down. And I completely agree with you. I'm going to stay on our discussion with the Adam Thielen. If you didn't already hear us talk about Adam Thielen, this I think one of the I think we went 5 or 6 players on Seth's love list for 2020. That the only player I vehemently disagreed with was Adam Thielen, just because of the way that the teams the team has changed in the last year plus with Dalvin Cook and running, and so I could put Stephon Diggs in the same boat. I agree with you, not a bad player, but at the same time, I think that he's a player that has been kind of given this. He's got a lot of upside type of characteristic, and I think with that type of team being the third lowest pass attempts team last year in Minnesota, I think that really caps his upside. And with their low passing volume, that really kind of actually hurts his floor at the same time as well. So someone going like that in the third round, I would agree right now would be on my early hate list as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was 17th last year in receiving yards. He was 34th in touchdowns, receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
So he's not a top 15 wide receiver. And last year it wasn't even a bad Stephon Diggs season. It was middle of the road. He's only had one season, and that was, I believe, 2018, in which he had that monster year with over 100 catches, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think that's the best you're going to see from Stephon Diggs. So, I'm off on Stephon Diggs for that reason. Do you agree with me on Stephon Diggs? Where do you come down on that?
Yes, I agree 100% on Stephon Diggs.
All right. So there's a few other players here. So I'm trying to think which order I want to go in. Okay. I'm going to save the one that I hate the least for last.
All right.
So third we have Hunter Henry, and his ADP could be completely way off from where I predicted. Depending on what happens with the quarterback situation, what happens with Phil Rivers, who they end up, if he leaves, who replaces him.
Yep.
Hunter Henry's health. So he went in the 6th round last year, 6.02. My prediction is like anywhere from the 6th to 7th round. My feeling is that even if they lose Philip Rivers, as long as they get somebody who's an okay placeholder, even if it's somebody like an Andy Dalton or a Jameis Winston, anybody like that, I feel like because of his talent and he's still really young, I feel like he's going to be in the 6th, 7th range, somewhere in there.
Right, just because he's a tight end, and
tight ends is pretty big drop off. Like there's only so many guys at that point too. You're looking at tight ends that have upside. He does have upside. The problem is that upside, fantasy owners haven't realized that upside since he's been in the league, and he's just missed too much time. He's too many injuries for Hunter Henry. He's missed 6 games over his first 3 seasons, and when he's been healthy, he's had spurts where he's been really good. But he's been very inconsistent. He's never had a season with more than 700 receiving yards. He's never had more than 55 catches in a season. And over the past 2 seasons, he's only contributed 9 total touchdowns. So I don't know if the big season is coming. He's entering his 4th year. If he can stay healthy and play a full 16-game slate, and they have a decent quarterback, I think that 6th, 7th round wouldn't be bad value. But problem is, there's no reason to think that he's going to play even 15 or 16 games. The quarterback position is up in the air, and he hasn't really proven a whole lot. He's like the ultimate terrible anti-path player.
Yeah, he really is. You're kind of just more
the wrong path. The
wrong path. That's right. He's kind of you're swinging for a home run.
He's a dead end player.
He's a dead end player. You're looking for when you're swinging with the home run with him. But the thing is, especially without Philip Rivers being there, I really got to feel like that home run type of swing is really not even that great of a upside type of play. So it's a really tough prediction on the 6th, 7th round. But to your point, he's got that name value. He has had some short success, but he's off the field too much. You could flip a coin with a lot of these tight ends. That was a one position in the path system review that was a complete 50% hit or miss scenario. So as you put into your article here, going after Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, someone equivalent to that, going into the 2019 season like Darren Waller, just taking a couple stabs at these players is probably means you're going to equate to a better chance of getting better return on your investment draft capital wise, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at that point in the draft, I would rather have a Darren Waller who's more reliable, probably just better. He had a much better season last year. Or I'd rather swing for the fences a little bit more and try and get somebody like the Noah Fant. TJ Hopkins is a complete wild card just because I think he's a little scary. Noah Fant actually had several pretty good games last season, and Drew Lock, maybe he has a pretty good second season. If Drew Lock is any good and that offense improves, Noah Fant with his raw athleticism and ability is somebody that I would rather have if I could get him like a round or two later than Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I agree. Where do you think that someone like T.J. Hawkinson is going to go? Because I think last year he went around round 10. He kind of had that rookie, sexy appeal to him, the unknown. He definitely underwhelmed, but he's definitely still kind of a big name and kind of one of the main attractions there in Detroit. So do you think he still kind of sticks around 10th round, or is it higher or lower?
Lower. Oh no, higher. I think
a little bit higher.
If I was to guess, I think T.J. Hawkinson is going to be like a 7th, 8th round guy, maybe 8th round. Mm-hmm. I just don't. I think at that point in the draft, you probably are gonna have 9 or 10 or 8 or 9 at least tight ends off the board, maybe 10 tight ends off the board.
Yep.
That I think at that point you're like, okay, I'm pretty screwed at the tight end position. Let me get somebody who has a lot of in rookie drafts. A lot of people took him in the first round for dynasty rookie drafts. He won in the first round of the NFL draft, top 10, right, to Detroit.
Yep.
So he's got all the ability, and at that point you're kind of swinging for the fences. So.
All right, I'm on board. 3 for 3 so far. Let's see if you can keep this agreement train rolling.
And the fourth player. So we're getting into my. This is where these last two players. I like the players.
Yeah.
I just think they're going to be a little bit overvalued, and I'm going by what information we have today. So I could be totally wrong. But this player is Deebo Samuel, coming off a pretty good rookie season. A lot of good rookie wide receivers we've talked about. 57 catches, 800 yards, 3 touchdowns. So the touchdowns are low, but for a rookie wide receiver, very, very good numbers.
Yep.
Especially in an offense like San Fran's, where they've a lot of inconsistency at the quarterback position. Jimmy G had a pretty year, and they're a run first team. They like to run the football, pound the rock. So the fact that he did what he did is a testament to he was a good prospect.
Right.
You liked him a lot going into the year. My thing with Deebo is I feel like he's one of those receivers that's going to make an immediate impact, but getting to the next level for him might be hard in that offense. So I think he's the perfect receiver in that offense to make that first little leap in terms of being relevant for fantasy, but making that next leap and living up to his draft price, which I'm guessing. Let me pull up what I had here. I had Deebo. My prediction was 5th round.
5th round. Yeah.
I think that's I think you could see that being a little bit higher. I think the average draft position on fantasy football calculators in 4th round. I think 4th round is kind of crazy high. I think 5th round is very realistic, given that a lot of people look at Deebo and they're like, wow, this is a guy who had a really good rookie season. If he makes that second year sophomore jump, they're banking in a lot of that upside is baked into the cake. I like A.J. Brown a lot more. I like DK Metcalf a lot more. And I'm not there on Deebo Samuel, especially not for the 5th round. Touchdowns is something I think is going to be really hard for him to come by. 3 touchdowns, extremely low. For somebody like him, I don't think the touchdowns is going to be an issue. I think high volume, reception totals is not going to happen for him either. When you have George Kittle there, if they bring back Emmanuel Sanders. So I think he can have a nice season. And he's a good example of a player that I could be wrong about, but I'm willing to be a year late on him instead of being a year too early and paying up for a 5th round pick.
Right. Let's let him prove that he can take that next level versus trying to draft into him because of the draft capital in the 5th round. I agree. Deebo Samuel is a football player, no doubt about it.
He is a football player. It's very accurate.
and you know what I mean by that. San Fran loves him as a nitty-gritty. He can get a lot of things done on the football field. He makes probably a bigger impact on the football field versus maybe the fantasy stats, right? Yep. So for all of those reasons, you got to be wary of what his next level of achievement is. Deebo is a perfect kind of auto fade type of player just because his team likes to run in touchdowns, likes to run a lot more than they pass. They already have, and they can win that way too. That's the other thing. A lot of teams say they want to do that, but they can't because they can't win. They're not ahead. San Francisco has got a great defense, and we just saw them obviously go to the Super Bowl with that philosophy. And so they have 3 running backs. They will just keep swapping those out. They're always going to be a running team. Debo is going to kind of have his games where he has a little bit bigger an impact, but even his best games are probably high teens when it comes to points. The upside just, does not seem like there's a clear path to that next level. So he's a perfect person to take a stab at last year, going in round 13, see if he can be kind of a role flex player for you. You don't really want to be drafting a role flex player that has a very low percentage chance to kind of really take it to the next level like Debo does. So I think this is going to be an easy fade, and I would anticipate this might be an industry thing. We'll see if the market is on pace, if the podcasts out there are more in line with this, the same way that like everyone loves Chris Godwin last year, all the podcast people did. I'll be very curious to see where people side on Debo, and if we're with the group or we're against the grain.
And my 5th player is probably my favorite player on this list, and I could see myself having shares of him if I'm wrong on for his average draft position. Is DJ Moore. So last year went in the 6th round, and him and Curtis Samuel were both players that the industry was pretty high on. They're really trendy, pretty sexy players. My prediction though is he's going in the 2nd round, and I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong about this, but his numbers actually were like identical to Debo's his first year. So DJ Moore was a 2nd-year wide receiver last year. If you look at his rookie season, 55 catches, 788 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was like identical to what Debo Samuel produced in his rookie season. And his jump was a seismic jump for DJ Moore. 87 catches, 1,175 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I feel like, though, the touchdowns is always going to be an issue. Same thing with DJ Moore. 6 touchdowns total in his first 2 seasons. And he was on the field a lot his rookie year. So he was someone that was on the field. He was obviously their number 1 last year. 6 total touchdowns. I feel like he's never going to be a guy that you're going to look to for touchdowns. And I feel like the receptions, the yards, everything else that he does that's good is we saw peak DJ Moore last year, and I think you're going to pay for for those peak numbers if you're going to get him in the late 2nd round. If you're taking a wide receiver even in the late 2nd round, early 3rd, it has to be somebody that can either put up 10+ touchdowns, or if they're not going to be that type of receiver, they're going to be the high volume reception guy. They got to be able to catch you 100 balls. I think we saw, I don't want to say the best out of DJ Moore that we saw last year, but I think we saw pretty close to the best, and you're going to pay a premium to acquire him. And their quarterback situation, they're probably going to draft a quarterback in the 1st round. Kyle Allen had a really bad second half of the season. And so you think on one hand it couldn't hurt. Like, you can't get much worse than Kyle Allen and Cam Newton. But you could get a different type of quarterback that maybe has a better connection with Curtis Samuel that isn't getting him the ball, or for whatever reason. Whenever there's a quarterback change for a receiver that posted those types of numbers, that's never a good thing unless the quarterback coming in is a substantial upgrade.
Yeah, this one is going to be the one that I mostly disagree with, kind of like you said, in terms of the player that you like the most. I think because even if you were to say that this was probably the top end of DJ Moore, which is probably accurate, you're also really not paying, like you're saying you're paying a premium for him, but I feel like there's going to be so many people going in front of him just because he still hasn't solidified his name. I mean, 87, 1,204, you could go out and draft Davante Adams, and besides the touchdown number, hope that he hits those numbers, right? And DJ Moore is going to go earliest back end of 2nd round. So I think you're going to get him for a little bit of a discount, to be honest, just because of the uncertainty. Well,
let me see. I think that's the big question with whether or not. That's why I like him the most out of the other players. Like, my hate for DJ Moore isn't that I don't like him as a player; it's about where he goes.
Right.
So I'm going to read off some players, and you tell me if. So here are some players that are going behind DJ Moore: Keenan Allen, which I think we both agree, especially given you can't really look at any Chargers because the quarterback situation's in flux. But
Yeah.
I think we both agree would probably rather have maybe DJ Moore a little bit over Keenan Allen.
Yep.
Because but they have Cooper Kupp and Amari Cooper.
But can we let's go back real quick to even Amari Cooper. Let's go back to both of those. Both of those, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper has been that type of 80 catch guy. I mean, Keenan Allen's been a 100 catch guy, to be honest. But Amari Cooper's been that 80, 1,000, not a ton of touchdowns, and he's always kind of gone in the that late second, third round, depending on the year. So I think DJ Moore kind of slides right into that marker. And if we were okay drafting Amari Cooper with that status, then depending on the percentage of chance of repeating, this is why I think DJ Moore might go behind a couple people, just because there's a little bit of uncertainty there, and you might actually get him for a little bit more of a discount considering his production. But go ahead and go through the players. I agree. DJ Moore over Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper over DJ Moore.
Yeah, I would rather have Amari Cooper. I'd rather have Cooper Kupp, who's going here behind him. I'd probably rather have Kupp. Then you have Diggs behind him, and I would probably rather have DJ Moore than Diggs.
To me, that one's that one's not as close as Keenan Allen.
And then you have Lockett, Allen Robinson, Tyler Boyd. Absolutely, I'd rather have him over all three of these. Then you have Adam Thielen.
Tyler Lockett's interesting. I kind of forget his numbers, but I think that one's a bit closer like Keenan Allen for me. Just because there's something to be said with, like we've talked about, I mean, with some of these players that are going to be basically guaranteed shoe-in wide receiver 2 path type players, how much do we overlook the fact that DJ Moore has a little bit more uncertainty compared to Tyler Lockett? So I think that one's a real close for me.
DJ Chark, which I think is going to be, I think that's incredibly close.
Some of these people are going to be real tough. I mean, there's a little bit of uncertainty on these players who have only done it once. I mean, if you include DJ Moore in there, DJ Chark, Allen Robinson kind of have a resurgence here, but do you have that level of trust, that you normally have had in the past? He's going to be a real interesting player as well.
Yeah, and I'm actually going through what I probably should is look at all positions. Those are just the wide receivers,
right?
Because then you get into like the Calvin Ridley, Robert Woods, and he's definitely above all those guys. And this is the ADPs are so like off the reservation right now. Like you look at Chris Carson's going behind him, Aaron Jones going behind him, Derrick Henry, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, and Aaron Jones are not going behind him.
No, definitely not.
So this is where I could be a little bit wrong. It's like maybe I'm off on how high he's going to go. If he certainly goes middle of the third round, like I would like him. But I think the underlying concern I have with DJ Moore is just it's a bad offense where Christian McCaffrey sucks up most of the oxygen, and you have a bad quarterback most likely, or a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
And he's somebody who's just not going to get touchdowns. So there's no margin for error with someone like DJ Moore. He had several games last year where in garbage time he just racked up catches where he was having really average games, which that could happen this year because they're going to be bad again. But
right, yeah, no, he's going to be a tough one because he had such a big increase in volume production, and they changed head coach, they changed offensive coordinator. I mean, even with all of Christian McCaffrey's production, all of Christian McCaffrey's touchdowns, you could even say, wow, he was still able to produce that with Christian McCaffrey taking a gigantic share of the piece of the pie. Like, you could easily see Christian McCaffrey's production going down to some normal, like, crazy good average, but, not what it was last year just because of the change in coach. So there's a lot there to kind of dissect. And I think overall, if DJ Moore can be that productive with Kyle Allen, and even the first couple of games with Cam Newton, I think there's a good chance that essentially, obviously, he can be really productive with anyone at this point.
Yeah, agreed. It's the same thing with like DJ Chark in the sense that he had terrible quarterbacks his first 2 seasons. I mean, Garrett Minshew had a couple of games, and DJ Chark played 15 games. If he played in a full 16 games, one game away from potentially having like 80 plus catches, 10 touchdowns. But yeah. So I think there's a chance that I could be wrong on DJ Moore, and that's why as I was including him in my list, I was like, this doesn't really fit with the rest of the players. But I was struggling to find a fifth player that I felt really strongly about.
He's going to have that gigantic jump in draft capital, so it makes sense. It makes sense in terms of a early player that you're not going to like, and I guess once we get a little bit closer, ADP is going to have a huge role in him.
Any players that come to mind that I left off that you were expecting I would put on here? Anybody that comes to mind for you?
Well, I think that I'm going to be probably off Aaron Jones, and I know that you haven't been as against him as I've been, and he more or less proved me wrong last year. I mean, he had just some monster games. I think that he's going to be probably a first-round pick this year and someone that I don't want to invest in. For whatever reason, I guess I'm just still having trouble believing that he had some games with his production, his touches were just so low. So that's one player that initially comes to mind for me that I'm going to be off. His draft capital is going to be so high. He hasn't proven that he can obviously be an RB1 back-to-back years. So kind of like you with the comment of you're going to wait to see someone like Debo, make that leap. I'm gonna force Aaron Jones, especially with the first round draft capital, to actually go back-to-back years. So that's one name that initially comes off the top of my head. I mean, what are your initial thoughts with Aaron Jones?
I think he was a first rounder. I'm probably out. But if you have the problem with taking Aaron Jones in the first round is I'm going to love a lot of these receivers that are going in the end of the first round. Like Hopkins is going to be a second half of the first round guy. Same thing with Devontae Adams. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. I would probably rather have all of them. But I mean, hey, I think Aaron Jones was second. I think he had like 19 total touchdowns last year. And he's still going to be in a good offense. Matt LaFleur did a really good job with Green Bay last year, and I think Aaron Jones can have a good season. But he's not going to have 19 touchdowns. So I think if you're looking at him, I think it's somewhere in between the first round and, Fantasy Football Calculator has him 2.12, the end of the second round. I think you'd like to get Aaron Jones in the second round, period. I like him more than Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, just him being a running back and on Green Bay, I feel like his draft stock just kind of be one of those that elevates. But and you have every right to easily say he could easily reproduce all of his numbers because he is a talented running back. He's on Green Bay. They've got Aaron Rodgers. I'm just going to kind of wait because the touches were a little bit inconsistent. A lot of the overall numbers are going to be based off of huge games, which you again, play devil's advocate. Hey, he has that kind of crazy per game upside, which is awesome. I also do know that Green Bay had Devontae Adams, who was hurt last year, and no other receivers behind him. Never mind when Devontae Adams was down.
Which might be the same thing this year, too.
It might be. And I don't even know if that's beneficial or not. I mean, if you're a running back, Aaron Jones should be able to get his touches regardless of who the receivers are. And so, but I'm probably out in terms of the draft capital on Aaron Jones. That's the first name that came to mind. I can't think of anyone else necessarily off the top of my head.
So I'm going to read off a play. So Aaron Jones is player B.
Okay.
And let me read you his numbers last year.
All right.
Played all 16 games. Ran the rock 236 times. 1,084 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. He caught 49 balls, 3 receiving touchdowns. A total 19 touchdowns. So he's player B. Now player A.
So that's Aaron Jones?
That's Aaron Jones, yep. Now
okay.
Player A, 298 carries, so more carries. 1,494 rushing yards, so 400 more yards. 8 touchdowns. So literally half the amount of rushing touchdowns is Aaron Jones. 36 catches, again, compared to 49 for Aaron Jones, and 0 receiving touchdowns. So you got player A, so some more higher volume, not quite as good in the passing game, very low on touchdowns, but more volume. Any guess on who player A is?
Let's see. Probably not Zeke. Zeke had more running touchdowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not Zeke. Not counting. Let's see here.
It's always a mistake to ask you to guess because you always take forever to even throw out a guess.
These are so hard. How many? And they said no receiving touchdowns. It takes out Leonard Fournette, I think.
36 catches.
36 catches. Yeah, it takes out. I don't know.
Nick Chubb.
Okay.
Nick Chubb is the answer. And Nick Chubb, they have him going in there. And I think this is pretty close to accurate. So they have fantasy football calculators. Nick Chubb's AP is 1.05. I think Nick Chubb is going to go in the first round. I think he's going to go in the mid to early first round. And that's why I'm reserving my hatred for Aaron Jones, because as much as I don't see him putting up 19 total touchdowns, it's not like his volume of touches was incredibly high.
Right.
He only had 236 carries, so you could see him getting more volume if Jamal Williams would just finally go away. And if you can get him late, like I would probably rather have – who would you rather have, Aaron Jones or Nick Chubb? I think I'd rather have Aaron Jones, especially if I could get him a few picks later.
I'm probably going to go with Nick Chubb on this one.
And the problem with Nick Chubb,
I mean, what's the deal with Kareem Hunt? I mean, he's still there, I guess. It depends. If there's no Kareem Hunt because of his recent whatever offseason thing again, if there's no Kareem Hunt, then it's definitely
Kareem Hunt's an unrestricted free agent, so consider him gone.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Nick Chubb. I think the volume is going to be too good there.
Yeah.
Just way too good. Yeah.
It's tough. Basically 300 carries. It's tough to beat. So, but if you could see if Aaron Jones is going to go in the second round, like a full round later, it's
a good point. It's a really good point, actually. And it's a good call. And, it's
always tough to pass up on somebody that shows he can get 19 touchdowns, especially if that player somehow falls. And it's not crazy to think he falls in the second round. Like, you look at now, I think somebody like Julio won't go in the first round. They have him here. Mike Evans probably won't go in the first round, especially if Winston's not there. Juju probably isn't going in the first round. These are all players that they have right here in the first round. But you could see like they have Zeke in the second round, right? So I think it's possible Aaron Jones is a borderline.
They have Zeke in the second round,
and they have Derrick Henry in the second round.
Zeke's gonna be another top 5 pick. I mean, that's bonkers.
Yeah, I think Zeke's gonna be at least a top 6 pick. So there's a very good chance that either Aaron Jones or Derrick Henry, one of them, is going in the second round. And just from a value standpoint, it's really tough to pass up on. Like at that point, I like them. Like I would love to get Aaron Jones in the early to middle second round. I mean, I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah, so. It's a great point. Yeah, if you get someone like him who's got a little bit of risk, probably not a ton, and you get him 7 picks later than Zeke, then you got to be probably thinking to yourself, well, that's probably good value.
Yep.
All right, Seth, that's going to wrap up our episode of Seth's Players He Hates going into the 2020 season real early.
Pretty positive one.
A pretty positive one, yep. If you missed our last episode, check out our review of the PAT system, what the PAT system is, the players that made the 2019 list, and their success rate. Huge results there. So make sure you go back and either watch that video on YouTube or listen to it live wherever you get your podcast. Check out our new website, NFLTalkingHeads.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube and hit the notification bell so that way you can get notified next time we go live. If you want to hop on to our live call and listen to us and actually send us some live messages. So we'll answer them live as soon as we start getting some live people here. And we are the NFL Talking Heads, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Talking